Did Freemason master Albert Pike plan and predict the 3 world wars back in the late 1800s? There is a rumor that has been circling the conspiracy community for more than 100 years, claiming that the Confederate general and master Freemason Albert Pike wrote a letter to Italian revolutionary Giuseppe Mazzini detailing how the 3 world wars were to be executed to bring about the Luciferian age. But is this letter actually real? Many conspiracy researchers, alternative news sources, and even some significant international news sources have spouted this rumor as fact for many years. For one example, the Daily Express, based out of London, has a 2016 article on this very subject. The Daily Express was founded about 120 years ago, and in the 1940s had the largest newspaper circulation in the world, issuing 4 million papers throughout its usual operations. In its 2016 article, chillingly accurate 200-year-old letter predicts World War III and final battle against Islam, we find the usual tale about the supposed eerie letter that predicted the 3 world wars. This letter was allegedly written about half a century before the first even occurred. The Express details: the letter plots how and why the First and Second World Wars broke out in the 1900s and provides an even more chilling prophecy over a third and final battle. The letter was apparently written by Albert Pike. Pike was born in Boston, Massachusetts in 1809. A child of intellect, he studied ancient history and could understand, in basic, works written in Sanskrit, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, and French. He was a prestigious writer, recognized throughout the country for short stories and poetry. One of his first critically acclaimed pieces of poetry was a collection he wrote titled A Hymn to the Gods, published in 1919. In it, he venerated some of the Greek gods like Hermes. In one passage, he wrote, "To Hermes, hear, white-winged messenger, thou, who invisibly dost ever stand near each high orator, and hand in hand with golden-robed Apollon, touch the tongue of the rapt poet, on whom men have hung, strangely enchanted, when, in dark disguise, thou hast ascended from cloud-curtained skies, and lifted up thy voice to teach bold men thy world-arousing art." At 24 years old, he became the editor of the Little Rock, Arkansas's Advocate and writer of Western adventure short stories. Later, he moved up in life and bought the Advocate paper and eventually sold it. Acquiring his license in law, he became a very popular attorney in the Southwest. During his time in law, he wrote many impressive works which expounded maxims of the Roman law and some of the ancient French law. He also oversaw integrated Native American territory as an attorney, representing natives to the federal court. During his late 30s, his intellectual expertise landed him a part in the Mexican War, where he led a cavalry of volunteer troops. During the Civil War, he was appointed as a brigadier general. Being originally a man from Boston, he grew an affinity for Arkansas. During the setting of the Civil War, although Pike wasn't hotly for slavery or secession, he chose sides with his fellow Arkansans. Because of his relationship with the Native Americans that he represented in court, he was asked to recruit and lead a cavalry of over 2,000 natives against the North during the Civil War. His reputation was tarnished as a war general after his army of natives disbanded and ran rampant throughout the battlefield. During that event, 2 other generals were killed, among other disgraces caused by the recklessness. Pike resigned from his duties as a military officer. Because of his grave errors and also seemingly anti-slavery past, he was held under suspicion by the courts. He was later arrested and was briefly placed under confinement in Warren, Texas on November 3, 1862. After being let out while still under investigation, he fled to Canada for some time. President Andrew Johnson issued him a pardon on August 30th, 1865. He lived out the remainder of his years practicing law, editing, and writing for various newspapers and journals. Previously joining the Freemasons in 1850, he decided to focus more on his involvement in works within the order. He participated in the creation of the Masonic St. John's College in Little Rock, Arkansas. He was the Grand High Priest of the Grand Chapter Lodge of the Freemasons of Arkansas from 1853 to 1854. He excelled within the specific Scottish Rite Order of Masons. In 1859, he was elected Grand Commander of the Supreme Council, Southern Jurisdiction of the United States, overseeing all sections of the country, excluding 15 states. He held that position until he died in 1891. Pike wrote many great works for the Masons, which now hold important insight for the world at large. Being an educated man with skill in translating various languages, including Sanskrit, he left behind many works like Indo-Aryan Deities and Worship as contained in the Rig Veda. He dedicated his life, and surely his old age, to researching the correlation between ancient beliefs and the philosophy of the Freemasons. His most famous work is, of course, Morals and Dogma of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. It was a massive overview of the world's ancient and modern systems of religious, spiritual, and ritual beliefs. It was to be a manual only for Freemason initiates. It explained and updated the philosophies and rites of the order. It was a secret book, one of which I have a physical copy of, that bears a warning label on the inside stating, "Esoteric book for Scottish Rite use only, to be returned upon withdrawal or death of recipient." This book, a fascinating topic to cover in itself, has also been used by conspiracy researchers to prove Pike was a Luciferian. There is a passage in which he asks why the name Lucifer would be given to the Prince of Darkness when Lucifer etymologically means light bearer. Pike suggests that Lucifer was a force for good, blinding the undeserving with true knowledge, as he posits, Lucifer, the light bearer, strange and mysterious name to give to the spirit of darkness. Lucifer, the son of the morning, is it he who bears the light, and with its splendors intolerable, blinds feeble, sensual, or selfish souls? It was this Albert Pike that many, for close to 150 years, have blamed for writing a letter in the late 1800s that planned and predicted the 3 world wars, explaining precisely how they came about. The article in the Express continues with the usual remarks stating, the document allegedly suggested World War I was planned to overthrow the Tsars in Russia and make the country a communist stronghold. The Second World War was sparked as a catalyst to destroy Nazism, according to the letter, so communism could take over wearier governments and for a sovereign state of Israel to be set up in Palestine. A Third World War, according to Mr. Pike, will be fought against the West and the leaders of the Islamic war. The purpose of these 3 world wars, according to the theory, was to slowly weaken the individual nations under communism and set up a proxy war between Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, with the atheistic communists secretly guiding the war. The goal was to have the countries of the world and religions of the world cancel themselves out in a war and lead an exhausted and afraid populace to huddle into a planned revelation of a new system, a one-world system of the Luciferian age. The Express discloses that its source for this information is another well-known book within conspiracy research communities titled Satan, Prince of This World, by former naval officer William Guy Carr. William Guy Carr is the source for all the modern mentions of the Albert Pike letter conspiracy. He was an English-born Canadian, born in 1895. He served as a naval officer in both World Wars and also worked in the Canadian Intelligence Service during World War II. He was a pioneering classical conspiracy theorist before the days of Alex Jones and even Bill Cooper. He was known to travel and give lectures on conspiracy subjects such as the International Communist Agenda, International Capitalism Agenda, Illuminati, Rothschild conspiracies, secrets of the Freemasons, and the nefarious agenda of Zionism. Mostly speaking from a Christian perspective, he was serious and alarming in his work. After the wars, he dedicated his life to writing books and giving presentations. It was in William Guy Carr's 1959 book, Satan, Prince of This World, that we find the famously recycled quotes about Pike's 3 world wars. I will recite the quote here, which is verbatim, what hundreds of conspiracy researchers copy and paste as a factual statement made by Pike in his alleged letter. The statement found in Carr's book is as follows: "We shall unleash the nihilist and atheist, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations of people the effects of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere, the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority or revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will be from that moment without compass, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the Satan, Prince of this world, pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view, a manifestation which will result from the general reactionary movement which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time." Then Carr follows up the alleged Pike quote by saying, "We ask the reader to study every word of this diabolically inspired document. According to Pike's military blueprint, drawn up between 1859 and 1871, 3 global wars and 3 major revolutions were to place the high priest of the Luciferian creed in position to usurp the world powers. 2 world wars have been fought according to schedule. The Russian and Chinese revolutions have achieved success. Communism has been built up in strength and Christendom weakened. World War III is now in the making. If it is allowed to break out, all remaining nations will be further weakened, and Islam and political Zionism will be destroyed as world powers." However, in the quote allegedly written by Pike, we don't see any mention of world wars, Russians, Zionism, or Islam. Carr discloses that this letter was originally held in the British Library, but has since been missing, as he states. The keeper of manuscripts recently informed the author that this letter is not catalogued in the British Museum Library. But Carr's source for the letter, as he also states in his book, apparently mentioned almost 30 years earlier that the letter was still being held there. He claims that the letter has been quoted from and referred to by dozens of authorities and students, including Cardinal Rodriguez of Chile. It seems strange that a man of Cardinal Rodriguez's knowledge should have said it was in the British Library in 1925. This letter, supposed to have been written by Pike on August 15, 1871, was mentioned in a work 30 years earlier by a Cardinal Rodriguez. The book that Carr sourced was Cardinal Rodriguez's The Mystery of Freemasonry. Jose Maria Cardinal Caro Rodriguez was a man with a highly esteemed ecclesiastical career. He was a Chilean priest who eventually rose to be the Archbishop of Santiago. Rodriguez, like Carr, was a believer in conspiracy theories and tended to blame a nefarious nexus of the Jewish elite for the evil in the world. He also taught that the highest orders of Freemasonry involved themselves in the worship of Lucifer, as he states here. The worship of Lucifer is not so mysterious that it has not reached the ears of those who have concerned themselves with Masonry. In the initiation of the 25th degree, Knight of the Brazen Serpent, one adores the infernal serpent, enemy of Adonai, friend of man, who, with his triumph, will make men return to Eden. The Cardinal was not the source for this supposed letter either. He does mention that he read that the letter was held in the British Museum, but never claimed to have seen it. Rodriguez's source for the rumor came from a text titled The Cause of the World Unrest. This text is a collection of writings from the early 1920s from the conservative newspaper The Morning Post, based around another controversial text titled The Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. The Protocols of Zion were disseminated around conspiracy circles claiming to reveal a plot by the false Jews known as the Synagogue of Satan to take over the world. In The Cause of the World Unrest, there is made mention of Pike's letter, as we see here. In the year 1896, there appeared in Paris a curious publication, The Devil in the 19th Century. It was an attack upon Freemasonry and came out in parts illustrated with grotesque and repulsive engravings. In particular, there is a letter, or an alleged letter, said to have been written by Albert Pike, and sets forth an anti-clerical policy which Mazzini is to follow in Italy. The measures proposed, including secular education, the expulsion of the religious orders, and so forth. The writers then proceed to quote the same letter with the same opening lines. We shall unleash the nihilist and atheist revolutionaries, and we shall provoke a formidable cataclysm. In this 1920s publication by the Morning Post, we find the final source for this rumor. The writers state that they came across the history of the letter in a work titled The Devil in the 19th Century. This work is a controversy all in itself, with a long history that has affected many generations of anti-Mason researchers. The work, published in the mid-1890s, claims to have seen the letter firsthand, and as we shall see, it says nothing of the 3 world wars or communism. It was originally written in French, and although I tried, I could not find any versions in English. I had to patiently seek out the passage from the almost 2,000-page publication and then translate it online. After translating it, I had to reconstruct some of it due to the crude loss of diction. Here is a reconstruction of the brief statement from the book, with the words in brackets inserted by me. Here, in fact, are some passages from the letter, very authentic and very official, written to Mazzini, August 15th, 1871, by Albert Pike. Then, religion will have to be so powerless and ruined that its followers will come of their own accord and blend into our ranks. Dazzled by miracles, they will follow us. If anyone remains to preach the teachings of the Christian God, their extermination will be carried out without any difficulty. The birth of the religion of Lucifer, establishing itself forever without rival on the globe, will not be an instantaneous operation, neither of a year, nor of a luster, nor of a century. The 21st century will be the century of gestation to surely bring about this age of Lucifer. The book uses the alleged letter not as proof of some blueprint for the 3 world wars, but as proof that Freemasonry, under Albert Pike, has secretly indulged in the worship of Lucifer, and that he and the agents of Lucifer seek to slowly destroy the world through deception. It also uses it as a basis for the veracity of the Bible. The author claims that the Luciferian agenda coincides with the prophecies foretold in the book of Revelation, which also states that there will be a time in which Satan will be allowed to rule. The author of the book is demonstrating that Pike's statement is a dangerous deception to his followers who think they will reign supreme on earth forever, when really it's a perversion of God's prophecy in the book of Revelation. In the biblical prophecy, God allows the kingdom of Satan to rule for a short time, and then Christ returns to banish it. This book, The Devil in the 19th Century, was written by Leo Taxil. It was an explosive pop culture work of literature that sparked a frenzy in the conspiracy community of Europe. It propagated the belief that Albert Pike and American Scottish Freemasonry secretly worshipped Lucifer under an occult sect of Freemasonry titled the Palladian Rite. Leo Taxil claimed to have come into contact with a mystical woman named Diana Vaughn. According to the book, it was Vaughn who revealed all the hidden secrets of Freemasonry to Taxil. She was initiated as a high priestess within the order who escaped after she learned their final plans of the Luciferian takeover. She is the one who first saw the letter and warned Leo Taxil about its nefarious contents of world domination. As I mentioned earlier, the book has a long history in itself. The book has become synonymous with what is now known as the Leo Taxil hoax. For months, Leo Taxil was publishing articles and giving speeches on his correspondences with the enigmatic Diana Vaughn. He amassed a huge audience, some of whom were of respective and professional status. They were amazed and drawn to his work. He promised to present Ms. Vaughn to them in a live lecture hosted by him. The hysteria culminated into this event put together by Taxil, in which Diana Vaughn was to reveal herself and speak to the people directly. The event sold many tickets and drew in a massive crowd. At the event, he awkwardly announced that the entire ordeal was a hoax. He made up everything to placate the common anti-Masonry rhetoric that was already popular at that time. Diana Vaughn was real, as he stated, but she was no priestess or anything close to it. Diana Vaughn was the name of his assistant who helped him write the articles. They used her name as a joke. He based a lot of his ideas in the book on other well-known works at that time. There was no letter. There was no secret Palladian rite of Freemasonry under Albert Pike that sought to take over the world through Luciferianism. After the event, Leo Taxil was chased out by the angry attendees. He fled the scene just in time to escape their clutches. The Leo Taxil story is still regarded by some as factual, believing that the hoax is a deceptive cover-up to hide the fact that he was telling the truth. William Guy Carr's version adds the effect of the world wars, especially World War III. This can be seen as an obvious personal addition, being that he fought in both wars. He was a high-ranking officer who understood the political climate. I'm sure it was easy for him to see the effective words of the fake Pike letter and see his worldview in it, building off of it to expatiate what he thought was a communist takeover by a satanic regime. As for the British Museum having this document at some point in history, it seems that some researchers over the years have requested a copy of the document through the Freedom of Information Act. From what I've gathered, looking into the matter myself, the British Library claims to have never had such a document in its possession. One thing is for sure, the legend of the Pike letter starts with Leo Taxil and his book. He claimed it was all just an elaborate joke, but maybe that's what a Luciferian regime that's secretly trying to take over the world wants us to think.